Coming up on Need to Know, what's happening to Latino students in the Rochester City School District with special needs? A recent Watchdog report finds that they're not only falling behind, but that they're facing systemic mistreatment. We'll examine the issue further. Also on the show, Rochester has a dozen sister cities around the globe, in Israel, Lithuania, Italy, Poland, and more. So what's the meaning behind these partnerships? And can they foster economic development as some say they can? We'll look into those questions and more. And a one-of-a-kind patent features groundbreaking technology for motorcycle safety. We'll hear more from the local inventor behind HealthStar helmets. It's all coming up right now on Need to Know. Latino students are the fastest growing population in public schools throughout the U.S. In a decade, they're projected to make up nearly 1/3 of all students in grades K through 12. A number of reports on the condition of Latinos in education reveal a picture of progress, but also challenges. Examining this growing demographic locally, particularly in the Rochester City School District, exposes something much deeper. A recent investigation by the Democrat Chronicle finds a number of flaws in how Latino students with disabilities are educated in the city school system. Joining me to discuss the issue further is Justin Murphy, the reporter behind the DNC's recent Watchdog report, Ana Casserly, an advocate for Latino families and founder of the group Special Kids, Special Parents, and Chris Siriano, Director of Special Education for the Rochester City School District. And thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. So, Justin, your recent Watchdog report titled Doubly Vulnerable was the culmination of half a year's worth of work. You interviewed over a dozen Latino families. You did fact-checking. You went back, you did second interviews. And I'm curious to know, when and how did this story first present itself to you?
The first I heard about it was speaking with some teachers at schools in the Rochester area, and they were telling me about, these are special education teachers and teachers of students who don't speak English, and they were telling me about some of the challenges that their students faced. After that, I spoke with some other Latinos, including Ana, who told me about the families that they knew about, and I think it was in September that I first sat down and spoke with a number of them, and with Ibero and with other groups in the community. And the more I spoke with them, the more I realized some of the same themes coming up and the problems that their children faced.
Well, according to your report, individualized education plans are known as IEPs. These are created to meet the needs of students with disabilities. They're done in meetings without qualified interpreters, meaning sometimes a Spanish-speaking student or a staff member is there to translate as opposed to a designated interpreter. The report also states IEPs are often ignored. It finds Latino students with special needs are disproportionately suspended, and that communication with Latino parents is often done through letters written in English. And Chris, I want to give you, the district, a chance to respond. How accurate are these findings?
Well, I want to first point out that I recognize, and the district recognizes, we need to make some significant improvements in how we deliver special education and how we recommend programs and services for students with disabilities, not just Latino students with disabilities, but for all students with disabilities. Some of those accounts are accurate, but they're not systemic. So when you look at interpreters not at meetings, there may be meetings where an interpreter doesn't show. And when we know about that, we address that. So the implementation of IEPs, it's not just specific to Latino students. If a student does not have something being implemented on their IEP, if we know the student, we resolve the issue. So it's a matter of student by student addressing those issues, and also recognizing that as a system we need to improve, and we are improving. So as we improve as a system, those things will begin to take care of themselves. So the goal is to get to a system that has the checks and balances that can actually address those individual student issues that we see and are facing right now.
Can I answer a question to him?
Absolutely.
I understand that he said this not only the issue for the Spanish community, I understand, but the problem with our children is that they don't speak English or they don't speak Spanish. And when they grab a child and they put it in a regular class with no language, our children are the ones that get affected. And later on, they accuse our children. They come with individual plans for another part, another countries, or another states. The behaviors. And knew that he came with an IEP. And when you grab that child and put it in a regular, we all understand no language, you know this is going to be a failing and it's going to be a behavior problem. They don't follow the IEP you come from. You other states.
So the IEP that they're bringing with them.
You have to wait 3 months to do the evaluation. By these 3 months, these children get suspensions. And that's the reason we're working with Metro Justice to stop the suspensions of these kids, because they are not behaviors. It's a lack of language. Parents, we do not get nothing in our language. We know this. The regulation said you had to give it to the parents in their language. Mr. Serrano knows for years because I sit with him, and the moment he started to work for Rochester District, and I went this to him and tell him, look, this is what's going on. And they don't that.
Let's start with the language barrier first. And I think that given the great diversity of the city school district, some would be surprised to hear great diversity in students, staff, and district leaders that there are these barriers when it comes to language. And I guess what accounts for that gap? In terms of the language barriers and the difficulties in having when letters are sent home written in English, and when they feel as though, and I read this in the report, that the needs of some of these families when it comes to language interpretation, it's not there.
Well, first of all, the letters that are sent home to parents, the required notifications that follow the Special Education Committee on Special Education process. As a system, we translate those letters into the native language of the parent. There are times when a specific student or a specific family does not get a letter in their native language, and we need to address that. But it's not representative of a systemic failure of the system and of the district to say we're not going to translate letters for our non-English speaking families. We do. Where we find there are issues, we address them.
Yeah, I want to tie in the suspension issue, and I want to do that. And Justin, you said in your report that students with disabilities who don't speak English well, you just mentioned this as well, will often face harsh discipline. How so? What did you find in your report to back that up?
Part of the problem is that if you don't have the IEP in place, and these students, especially if they've recently come from Puerto Rico or from a different country, they're already in a very dislocated position. So, and if they have an IEP or a disability that leads to behavioral problems, like the young man that I wrote about, if he doesn't have support in place right away, then those problems are going to surface, and he's going to get into a cycle of disobedience and discipline before he can make any progress. And in fact, the fact that he's spending more than half of his time suspended outside of school really prevents the district, even at that point, from trying to put something more in place, because frankly, they don't know him that well. He spends more of his time at home than he does at school.
Did you want to add something on it?
Yes, and that's the problem. It's not our families requesting everything. We know that you only can give us 2 pages when the IP is 20 pages, okay? I understand that, because you cannot translate a regular IP.
So you're saying the IEPs are traditionally about 20 pages long, but what parents are receiving
is 2 pages.
2 pages. Is that accurate?
And there is no requirement in regulation to translate a full IEP. So what we do in Rochester is we provide a translated summary of the IEP for the parent. We are moving forward to address that. While it's not required, we're looking at putting a process in place that will start to translate the entire document for all our non-English speaking families. So that's something that we're going to go above and beyond what regulation requires, because we recognize that it's a need and a want in our district. So it's something we're moving forward with. I'd like to touch upon, I think there may be a little misrepresentation of the process for when students come into the district. Let's say a student from Puerto Rico that transfers in. We have a very structured process to ensure that those students receive what's called a comparable level of services. So we meet with the family at the point of placement, and we look at that IEP from Puerto Rico or from whatever state they come from. And we develop, based on that IEP, a comparable level of services for that student and place them into, whether it be a special class or into general education with supports and services. We are required to deliver a comparable level of services, and we do that. And then that triggers the CSE process to move forward from there. So then once that student is in some level of support, then our CSE, with our Committee on Special Education, would then evaluate that student and determine, is that student truly eligible in New York State, and what additional services they may need.
To answer the first question that he said, the district, Rochester district, is going to do a favor for the families to translate all the IEP in Spanish. We appreciate that. But a lot of other districts will translate the full IEP for the parents that speak a second language. You are the only district in this moment they're not doing it. All other districts doing it. In this moment, what we are more worried about is the suspensions. You see, my children that I work, my 40 families that I work, all the time the kids they're home. And
because of suspension.
Yesterday I have a problem. I said, why? You're going to send this child, they have an IEP home now. I went to the school, the Monroe High School, and I say, because I called the parents, then you had to remove it. I said, you don't have to remove it. I said, for his safe. I say, you tell me that you cannot have safe security for these kids in this school system? I said, that means every time we're going to have to grab the children and move it to another district, that way they can be safe? Our children is getting the lack of education because it's not the law. We're not asking the district or Rochester something that not be the law say they are. We want appropriate education for our kids. For years, they lied to us. They tell them they're going to get a diploma. I'm a mother there with twins, and one of my twins have a disability. For years, they told me that he was going to graduate with a diploma. But then I find out it was not true. The state sent me a letter that what they say in the IEP is not a diploma. It's only a certificate. They said that he went for 21 years sitting in that chair and he did not learn nothing.
Well, let me ask you, are there metrics to measure? You've mentioned some of the changes that the district will be implementing when it comes to special ed. Are there metrics to measure progress? Is there a way for interested parents, families, and community to measure them as well?
For sure. I mean, the most basic measure or metric you want to use as a parent with your child with a disability is looking at the progress that child is making towards their annual goals on their individualized education plan, so a program. So you want to ensure that that's occurring. And if not, you go back to the Committee on Special Education to talk about what may need to change. But if you want to look at a larger level of you really want to look at the outcomes for students with disabilities. I recognize, and I've said, we need to improve significantly how we deliver special education in Rochester, and we are making improvements. 2 years ago, our graduation rate for students with disabilities was around 17%. It's now 27%. We significantly increased the number of students with disabilities that are attending our summer learning programs from last year to this year. So we're making those improvements. We've expanded our level of services for students. There are more program options specifically targeted for subgroups of students with disabilities. So you'll see increased programming for students with autism. You'll see increased programs for students with significant language delays, students with significant cognitive behaviors. All of those programs, that was something we recognized was a need in the district to expand our services so we have programs that are specifically targeted to the diverse population we have. So if you look at, and there are a variety of metrics. Another key one is the number of students with disabilities that are in less restrictive environments compared to where they were in previous years. So that's one key metric to show that we're moving in the right direction.
I would like to talk about, you don't mind.
And we're going to wrap soon. So
I would like to talk about is they need to implement the code of conduct because it's affected our children in this moment. Because the code of conduct is a little paper, 2 pages for us, okay, Spanish people. We never knew it until we find out through Metro Justice that it's this big. We never, like parents, read it. The regulations say many of the students is getting arrested in our district because 16 years old and you have a disability, you're going to show different behavior. And they get arrested, they lose all that time because they be out of school.
And these are all things that I want to appreciate all of you for being there, things that we want to follow up on. Justin, I'm sure that this is something that you'll continue to watch, and we can look forward to a follow-up from you. Chris Siriano, Anna Casserly, and Justin Murphy, I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me today. You can find a link to Justin Murphy's report. It's called Doubly Vulnerable. It's on our website, WXXInews.org. Just click on the link, Need to Know. Promoting peace through mutual respect, understanding, and cooperation, one community at a time. That's part of the mission of Sister Cities International. The program was created by President Dwight D. Eisenhower back in 1956. He envisioned a relationship between different cities around the world, a way for different cultures to celebrate and appreciate their differences while also building partnerships that could lead to everything from development projects to educational exchanges. Rochester has 12 sister cities around the globe. So how relevant are these relationships today, and how do they benefit our community? To learn more, I'm joined by City Council member Carolee Conklin, who serves as president of International Sister Cities of Rochester, and Paul Kakamis, president of Linkages of Rochester. It's great to have both of you here.
Good morning. Thanks
Welcome
for having
back.
us.
You both returned from a recent trip to our sister city in Rochester. And I want to start by, Carolee, I would have you explain, for people who say, you know, how relevant are these relationships and what are they about? How would you explain that to them?
Well, and bear in mind, as we just commemorated the 70th anniversary of World War II, that was really the foundation for Sister Cities. It was peace through understanding. The first Sister Cities were from war-torn Europe. It's a program that over the past 50-some years has become people-to-people diplomacy other than government to government or nation to nation. And I think it's been extremely effective in communities understanding one another.
Well, I would have to imagine that sustaining these partnerships requires a certain type of commitment. And Paul, this is something that you're involved in, with in particular when it comes to our sister city relationship in Russia. So talk to me about, you know, Linkages of Rochester is a volunteer group, and you work at maintaining this relationship. What's involved in doing that?
Well, to be honest, there's quite a bit involved to maintain our relationship with Veliki Novgorod, Russia, which is our sister city in the Russian Federation. In fact, this is our 25th anniversary of the signing of the Sister City Agreement back in 1990. And it was very relevant, I thought, that the city of Novgorod invited us to celebrate that anniversary in the context of the 70th anniversary of Victory Day. But we maintain our relationships through the work of volunteers. We're an all-volunteer organization. No one gets paid. And we have a board and also members who devote themselves to exchanges in the areas of education and human services, women's issues, and most recently, in the past year, domestic violence issues. So it involves, you know, quite a bit of exchanges in terms of maintaining contact with our friends and colleagues in Novgorod, and actually visiting, you know, back and forth.
Right. Well, I've read that there's been a shift in sister city partnerships. While these cultural exchanges and educational partnerships do continue to exist, that economic development goals between sister cities is something that's growing now. In 2013, Chicago and Mexico City, they entered into a first-of-its-kind trade agreement, and this was really to, really to sustain certain industries and to make trade more competitive, global trade more competitive. And I want to know, are there similar business ties taking place in Rochester?
Yes, there
How
are.
so?
Well, our sister city in France, Rennes, France, which is the capital of the Normandy region, there's a trade mission that our Rennes committee is actively involved in. There have been we've had meetings with the council from the French Council on Economic Development. We're looking at also the Lithuanian sister city is looking at some trade exchanges. So I think there's been a shift. Not that we're putting aside the educational or different types of exchanges, but we're broadening it to include trade missions.
And when it comes to this most recent trip to Russia, I guess what were some of the gains and the opportunities and that we learned? How does Rochester benefit from something like that, a visit like that?
Well, and this visit really had very little to do with economic development. It was a commemoration of our 25th anniversary. And bear in mind that in 1990, that was the old Soviet Union, and there were very few relationships between any American communities and Russian communities. So it was very special from the beginning, and it was also dovetailed with the Russian Federation celebration of the end of World War II, which I don't think a lot of Americans understand the terrible losses. You know, Russia lost over 26 million people that died in World War II. It's a staggering amount, and like Europe, they had been ravaged and their cities destroyed. Our sister city, Novgorod, was 90% destroyed during the Nazi occupation in 1941. So, and the celebration was more of a commemoration of loss, and it's probably one of the most moving things we've ever been a part of.
I would say the same thing. It was really an intergenerational commemoration too. All levels of society, all ages participated. You know, school children conducted projects in their schools, and we were able to witness some of that, performances that we attended. And they also honored the older veterans, and they're very old now, since they're at least 86, 87 years old, by congratulating them, by thanking them, and by giving them flowers.
Yeah.
Do we have any other sister city partnerships on the horizon in the near future? And if so, what kind of characteristics do we look for?
Well, there's quite a process involved. It's generally a 2 to 3 year process, and it's very time consuming and has to show a number of things that have taken place.
Well, Paul Kakamies and Carolee Conklin, thank you for joining me today. And for you to learn more about our sister city partnerships here in Rochester, you can check out the website, rochestersistercities.org. How many times have you been driving down the road and found yourself completely taken aback by a nearby motorcycle? Turns out motorcyclists are 30 times more likely to die in a crash than those driving in a car. Motorbike riders are also 5 times more likely to be injured. As May marks Motorcycle Safety and Awareness Month, we meet one Rochester man who has created new, easy-to-use technology to keep riders safer on the roads. Need to know Sasha Ann Simons has more.
At the last minute, a motorcyclist between me and the van I was stopping behind moved his head. And when he did, he unblocked the third brake light that was on the van in front of him. And otherwise, I didn't see the motorcyclist. So panic stop, nobody got hurt. If I had seen something at eye level as opposed to, you know, a foot off the ground, dimly lit taillight that I'm just not used to looking at, I could have seen him.
That terrifying moment nearly 15 years ago birthed an idea that David Werner says will literally shine a light on motorcyclists and save their lives. Werner invented HELSTAR, a wireless brake and turn signal light for motorcycle helmets. According to the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles, motorcyclists accounted for 14% of the total highway fatalities in the country, even though motorcycle registrations only represent 3% of all vehicles in the United States. Now here's how HELSTAR works. A rider installs a small transmitter on the motorcycle, attaches the light to the back of the helmet, and using low-power radio frequency, the two wirelessly connect. And the best part? You don't have to remember to turn it on.
That's the significance behind it. So really, it's just get on and ride. Across the globe, there have been numerous studies done in the US, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and over in Europe. And all the studies have the same findings. Motorcyclists get hit because they're not seen. We have 21 claims in the patent. So there's a host of features that go along with this. The unit is programmable, it's upgradable, there's a bunch of cool stuff that it does. But this is just the first version of it. The second version that we have will be integrated into a helmet, so built in.
After scraping together hundreds of thousands of investment dollars years ago and conducting in-depth national market research, Werner's company Third Eye Design created 50 of the HealthStar devices for pilot participants across the country. The rave reviews tell them that it's time to make more.
Hopefully in the years to come, as more things or more technologies advanced and there's an interest to keep everybody safe, I think that's going to be best for everybody. We can keep these numbers down.
While the business seems to be going well, the challenge of financing HealthStar has sometimes taken its toll.
If I knew how much money I would have invested in this before I started, I probably wouldn't have done it. It was $10,000 at a time, $5,000, $35,000, and eventually $250,000 later, we were coming to the end of our ability to continue to support it. So we had some people who had been following us with what we were doing, and a couple of years ago, a couple of those guys stepped up and said, "We'd really like you to pick the pace up."
They're hoping to secure enough funds to get HealthStar into production by late summer. The unit retails for $149.
If I really do make money doing this, if I divide the money I make into an hourly wage, since the time I started, I'm sure it won't be minimum wage, but that's okay.
As temperatures go up, the bikes come out. And with May being Motorcycle Safety and Awareness Month, officials say it's a good season to talk about this.
Because there's already enough things that are out of your control that, animals jump out of the road. There's other people that you can't control their behaviors or their condition of impairment. But if you can take responsibility for the vehicle you're driving, whether it's a two-wheel motorcycle or a four-wheel truck or a regular automobile, then we should have a nice, safe trip.
Werner's waiting for the day he gets that email or phone call that HealthStar gave someone else a second chance at life.
Third Eye Design was formed on the belief that we can use technology to make the world a better place. And this is the first embodiment of that technology. And we're going to start by saving motorcyclists' lives, one motorcycle at a time.
I'm Sasha Ann Simons for Need to Know.
For our bikers watching the program, you can win a HealthStar brake and signal light by entering a contest on the company's website. For details, visit thirdeyedesigninc.com. And that's it for this edition of Need to Know. I'm Helene B. and Duty Hofer. Thank you for joining me tonight and throughout the weekend. I'll see you next week right here on WXXI TV.